Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Tuesday Night Luke Live Online on Wednesday afternoon because I took off the 4th of July. I had a wonderful day. I hope that you too had an enjoyable day. I went off with my brother-in-law to visit my nephew and godson, Vincent, at his college. We had a delightful day together. We met his roommate. Finally, we all went out for breakfast and then saw the new Indiana Jones movie. Harrison Ford, now 80, still with that same kind of persona, that charm and uh, upstart that Indiana Jones is. What I liked about it is they really acknowledge that Harrison Ford and this character is 80 years old. And rather than desponding aging, there was something very life-affirming about his inability to jump and take the leaps that he used to and such. Also, which was fun, the movie was in 4D. I hadn't heard of 4D. We know 3D. 4D is that our seats move along in response to the action on the screen. So if there's a car chase, your is moving. And if there's a bullet flying, you get a little shot of air from the back of the headrest on the chair. It goes right past you. If they jump in a river, you get a little bit of water, just a little bit, like a spritzer. What do you call that? I guess a spritzer. Around on your face, or it was a hoot. We had a great time, but as I said, it was very life affirming of passing of time, and there's even some. Well, I won't tell you any more about it. People don't like spoilers. All right, so now let us get to Luke chapter 22, the conclusion, verses 66 to 71, and a little bit of chapter 23, 1 to 3 or 4, I forget which one, but you'll know when I stop. Okay, now, very important. The insights that we're going to get in this episode are give us a foundation for really an excellent way to engage in the whole passion of Jesus and the purpose for which all these terrible things happen to him. And it's very important that we understand them in the context. So let's start with the first sentence, chapter, again, 22, verse 66. When day came, the council of elders of the people met, both chief priests and scribes, and they brought Jesus before their Sanhedrin. Now, we know this is an historical event, and this is in the context of the Jewish faith at the time in what was the Romans called Palestine, and in the context of the Roman Empire and their conquest of the area. We also know the context that there's religious leaders and there's political leaders, so we see the intersection and the conflict between the two. These are universal. It's been since the beginning of civilization. It continues down to this very day that we look at it in its historical context is important, but that we do not see it as a statement against any particular people, actually either Jew or anyone with Roman or Italian heritage. It's far beyond any ethnicity. It's important that we see the context because it relates to all of human nature and institutions. For example, we know way back in Exodus, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, the people need, as they're coming together, the different tribes for an identity, they need leaders and they need judges. They need people to help them solve conflicts and to look at what their laws are to determine. And we know that it's a positive aspect of institution, but like anything in human nature, it has its benefits and it has its burdens. We can achieve great things with our institutions, and we can resort to temptations and give in to evil and selfishness and prejudices and anger. This is, again, universal. Absolutely universal. So we see scripturally with the Hebrew scriptures that sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. Hello. We can apply it to Christianity. The early letters of St. Paul are all addressing conflicts, and we see the benefit that we have people of stature and leadership who can come in and try to help resolve these conflicts. And we see sometimes the biases or prejudices of the leader play themselves out for not particularly very good. Yeah, even in the situation with St. Paul, because then he gets so critical of Peter, he shames Peter in public, not the best. But at the worst, of course, we know when Christendom became so integrated with politics, we have the horrors of the Inquisition. So as you were seeing Jesus before the Sanhedrin, or the leaders of his own Jewish people at the time, we need to see, oh yes, then we can see ourselves in front of the inquisitors and the cardinals that were putting people to death. And we can see that, yes, it was trying to maintain a certain orthodoxy, but yes, it gave in to violence, manipulation, and to a lot of untruths and other related sins or ways people harm themselves. We can go beyond Judaism and Christianity. We see it in the Reformation. We see it in the battles between Hindus and Muslims and Buddhists in the history of the Eastern countries. The Buddhists and the Hindus who claim that peace and an inner sense of wholeness and reverence towards everything, they give in to violence and kill each other. So this is the context for understanding the Passion of Jesus. If we see any other context, if we're looking to blame this one or that, or the descendants of these people, we are wrong, wrong, wrong. Why would God allow Jesus, for us who believe his son, to engage in something that was just limited to one particular group of people? Or to us, it has to have a universal reverence, or it's not the story. We talk a lot today about the cosmic Christ, and this is the context for all of it. Okay, so I'll repeat this and move on. When day came, the council of elders of the people met, both chief priests and scribes, and they brought Jesus before the Sanhedrin. They said to him, "If you are the Messiah, tell us." And he replied to them, "If I answer, you will not believe me. And if I question you, you will not respond. But from this time on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the power of God." They all asked, "Are you then the Son of God?" And he said in reply, "You say that I am." Then they said, "What further need have we of testimony? We have heard it from his own mouth." Then the whole assembly arose, and they brought him before Pilate. They brought charges against him, saying, "We found this man misleading our people. He opposes the payment of taxes to Caesar, and he maintains that he is the Messiah king." Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he replied and said to him in reply, "You say so." Okay. What's going on here? We see people getting caught up in a fervor of might makes right, again, of universal human frailty, failing of institutions. We also get a little puzzled at Jesus's responses. The first is very honest. Like, we can think of Joan of Arc before the Inquisition, when he says, "Well, if I answer you, you're not going to believe me, and if I ask you questions, you're not going to respond." I mean, again, the mind is closed, the eyes are closed. No one's here into a dialogue here. It's all who's right, who's wrong, who has the power, who doesn't. What does he mean when he says, from this time on, you'll see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the power of God? It's an apocalyptic image, it's a metaphor, it's an illusion. He's saying that, again, the universality of truth in the face of fears and angers and prejudices and failures of institutions, this is being exposed by the universal truth, which is the power of God. And that's the dynamic that occurred then, it occurs now. And that's what we really understand. He's not saying that God's coming down to earth now, or that the Messiah is going to be raised to the heavens. He's talking about a dynamic that was then in the face of evil, and is always in the face of evil. God's truth is ever present if we take the time to seek it out, to dig deeper beyond the surface of things. So then again, when he says, why does he say to them, are you the Son of God? And he says, you say that I am. Again, what's he's doing, he's making the reference that they have their own very limited sense of what Messiah is based on their particular expectations, based on what they want, what they prefer. Again, we know many were preferring a valiant warrior, okay? So he's saying, well, this is your definition. You're not really asking my questions to learn. His Messiah, as we know from all his life and preaching, is very different from a warrior leader or a king in the secular sense. So that's why he's responding that way, right? And then he says, and if I ask you again, you don't want a dialogue. So then they bring him, well, all right, we are limited here in our religious institutions. Again, most often the case of any religious institution, we know that the church became co-opted in its own sense of politics. We know the Reformation, the divisions among Christians flourished because Luther got the support of the king and some of the dukes and everything like that. Again, universals. Absolutely universal. So, all right, let's defer now. Let's give the secular world its power, and it's not interested. It's only interested in maintaining the status quo, peace at any price, which we know is not really a value for people of faith and of great morality. And so Pilate, again, we have a reiteration of what happened with the religious leaders. Again, from religion to politics, we're always human fallibility, always ways that we harm ourselves and others. We call that sin. It's perennial. Pilate asks him, are you the king of the Jews? And again, he says, well, you say so. In other words, again, well, you're saying whatever you think, and there's no point. You're not really here to take in any information. So please always, in the Passion of Jesus, see that there are lessons for us. The power of God is exposing our illusions, exposing our failures, it's exposing our sins. That's why we say he takes away the sins of the world. And you can't take anything away unless you're very clear on what you're taking away. And this is what he's doing. He's exposing it. So let us ponder all that. Now, and even go back to yesterday and the 4th of July. What was all the conflict that brought about that American Revolution? Did we have to take up arms? Was it absolutely necessary? What's the political dynamic? These biblical stories are meant to apply to everything, you know. And then lastly, I did forget to mention, when they bring up the charges against Jesus, we know that they're outright lies. He opposes the payment of taxes to Caesar. It's not true. All the Gospels say, in answer to that conflict, he said, look, pay to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, but to God what belongs to God, meaning there's a distinction between our reverence for God and just taking care of our secular responsibilities. So lie number one. Lie number two, he's never claimed that he is the Messiah. He's used the term Son of Man most often. He never said Son of God. Son of Man is the tradition of the prophets, of the people who were called by God to speak truth, to make evident what is and clearly what is not. They're not fortune tellers. We got that in the last passage when the Roman soldiers are taunting him and say, well, they blindfolded him, smacking him, hitting him. Who is it? But that's not what prophecy is. Prophecy is talking about the signs of the times, seeing where the future is bringing us, not what the future is dictating to us. So who hasn't, even in our best intentions, when we have a particular goal and we believe that is right, will not manipulate the truth a bit or actually outright lie in order to get what we think is something good? We've done it as children. We can fall into it now. And that's why we believe in the importance of love, forgiveness, and the opportunity to keep learning from our mistakes. And as we see, and the importance of Scripture is to learn from the mistakes of our people before, during, and while, so that we don't keep perpetuating them. So, this was a longer edition than usual, but I hope you find it productive and enter into more conversation. God bless everybody.